Hiya, it's Lydia Greatrix on the Women in Music show on Gorgeous FM. I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying your Thursday evening. I'm here with you until 9 p.m. tonight. But now it's time for this week's Woman of the Week now. And this week it is singer-songwriter Emma Langford. Emma is from Limerick in Ireland, and her music takes on quite a lot of different genres. Not only is she a fantastic musical theatre style singer, she's also great at jazz style, pop, and most recently more of an Irish folk sound. She's got 2 albums out, one called Quiet Giant and the other is called Sowing Acorns, both of which we will talk about in a little bit later. But I wanted to know at first what a young Emma Langford was like and what role music played in her early life.
So music was like how I communicated, like literally, as in I got kicked out of play school for, instead of taking instructions, I sang instructions back to the teacher. And so I got kicked out. It's kind of all I did. I was for a very long time, and not in an active like I want to be a star, I want to be a musician. Just it's how I was. It's who I was. My parents are both visual artists, and they brought music into the house from, the day we were born. So there was, I'm not going to say I had like really cool influences in terms of music. Like the stuff I play is not strictly the stuff I grew up on. So I had, we had like the best of ABBA playing on repeat in the house. And we had the music of the musicals really that I think were the first part of my musical DNA. So like Les Mis, Grease, Phantom of the Opera, I can't even remember what else, but we had just had musical theatre soundtracks playing the whole time in the house, and that was the beginning of the end, I think, for me. I was always singing. I was in every choir, I was in every stage school. My older sister loved singing as well, and we'd like listen to duets from the musicals and we'd play them on a cassette. We'd play the musicals on a cassette and we'd pause them and write down the lyrics on a piece of paper, and then we'd practice the duets together, this kind of stuff. So like that was, I would say, like a big foundation for my interest and my love for music, just it being part of my everyday. And then I think I was like 15 when my mum wanted me to learn to play the guitar, because she played the guitar and I didn't want to because my mum plays it, so it's not cool. And an exam was coming up, and all of a sudden I took a strange interest in the guitar because I really didn't want to study. So I started playing guitar, and it kind of spiraled from there, I suppose.
I saw that duet you did with that guy from Colours. Was it Colours musical?
Yeah.
And I was so blown away because all I'd been listening to up to then was your kind of like more folky kind of style. And there you are singing a musical theatre song, and I'm like, mind blown.
Yeah, my best friend lives a bit away from me. We haven't seen each other in a year, but we would have been in university together, and she would know about my kind of musical theatre being my first love, and she's seen me do musical theatre stuff, but it was always just like college productions. It wasn't like, public, and it was long before I pursued a career in music, so nobody who knows my music now for what it is would expect it. But when all of that stuff came out and people were like, oh my god, I didn't know you could do musical theatre, she went full like possessive. I knew her first vibes and was like, I mean, like, obviously I knew that like all along. How did people not know that this is what you do? It was gas.
What's your music taste like now compared to back then? Are you still in love with musicals?
Oh, very much so, yeah. They just bring me joy. Musicals and Disney music are always going to make me happy. My taste is quite diverse now. Like there's a big surge in hip hop in Ireland. We've got some really, really incredible artists. So I've been listening to more of that than I ever have. And then, I listen to whatever's on the radio to a degree. I tend to avoid chart stuff because it's a little bit homogenous sometimes. I literally listen to everything. My main people that I listen to on repeat, there's a musician called Wallace Bird who does kind of like pop, folk, rock type stuff. She's just really cool and it's hard to describe what she does. And there's Declan O'Rourke, who's 100% like folk, trad kind of stuff. And then there's Annie DeFranco, who's like, she would be one of the first big female names that I ever listened to. I love her guitar playing and stuff, and her songwriting is somehow incorporates punk nuance into a folk idiom, which is really, really cool.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned Ani DiFranco, because you've chosen her as your favourite woman in music. I listened to that song as well. You sent me Lifeboat. It's just nothing like anything I've ever heard before, and I think that's what you kind of hit the nail on the head there, like kind of the punky and the folky kind of mixed together. Why did you choose Lifeboat in particular? What is it about the song?
Well, I mean, the song is delivered through the character of a homeless woman, and I find the way Ani DiFranco sort of puts her feet into the shoes of other people is really, really interesting. Her like lyrical imagery is just sublime. It's unbelievable, and the way she paints a picture with her words is out of this world. You can just you find yourself free falling into this, you know, world that you've never been in. She was based in New Orleans when she wrote it, so it's obviously from the perspective of someone that's in New Orleans. But I think as much as anything else, it's a feeling as much as the actual literal story she's telling in the song. It's a feeling. It's this kind of marching beat and a feeling of vulnerability, but also this real strength that she manages to capture in most of her work. But in that song, this image of a homeless woman who's grinning because her face doesn't know what else to do, it's just, I find it really, really powerful.
That's the song chosen by this week's Woman of the Week, Emma Langford. That's Lifeboat by Ani DiFranco. Such a kind of a mishmash of just punk and folk there. Haven't heard anything like it. Now, Emma, our Woman of the Week, is a singer-songwriter from Limerick in Ireland, and she's got 2 albums out. She's got Quiet Giant and Sowing Acorns. The 2 albums have got 2 quite different sounds. The first is more of a kind of jazzy, poppy almost, maybe a bit of blues in there as well, whereas Sowing Acorns has more of an Irish folk with pops, with perhaps a little bit of jazz in there as well. And as these 2 genres are quite different from each other, I wanted to ask how she would compare these 2 albums.
Really, the difference between the 2 albums for me is Quiet Giant, I wanted people to like me, and on Sowing Acorns, I was telling people this is who I am and you can like it or not. And I was also obviously a bit more, I think, comfortable in who I was in terms of musically by the time Sowing Acorns came around. So I was just, I suppose, writing a bit more from a perspective of these songs are going to tell the world something, and I'm looking forward to that, and here you go.
The sound of kind of like Irish folk, what is it that kind of drew you to that sound? Is there something you just love about it?
For me, what drew me to it was, I suppose, just trying to touch in with who I actually am at the core of my being, not who I need to be to make records, or not who I need to be to get a hit. I never approached music from the perspective of wanting to be a superstar. That was never my goal. But when you start producing albums, that's always in your head of, you know, this needs to do well because I need to make this money back. I need to survive as a person and as a musician, and so this needs to take off. And I think I actually learned when I was producing my second album that leaning into who you actually are authentically will do that much better for you than trying to sound like someone else. So I mean, I am Irish. I've grown up in Ireland. I've been surrounded by beautiful Indigenous, authentic trad and folk sounds. Most of my influences, songwriting wise, have been in the folk genre, and I just decided this is probably closer to who I am than anything else. So I just went for it.
What is your songwriting process like? Do you kind of just think up these stories in your studio, or what is your kind of like process of songwriting?
So there are a few ways I approach it, but the main way I think most of my songs have come about is I've heard or I've said a sentence that has a natural melody to it, and I'll write that down and I'll allow that to kind of fester and brew for a while. And then when I want to say something that needs that sentence, I'll come back to it. So in the case of my song Birdsong, the main motif of "Till your eyes find me, I'm strong as my bones" comes from a moment in university when my lecturer was talking about kind of these vulturous type people who will exploit you and take everything they can from you and never give back. And the phrase she used was, they'll gobble you up and come back for the bones, which at the time I was 22, 23, I guess, and in a very vulnerable place in my life and going through a lot of stuff, and hearing a woman say something like that was really, really powerful for me. So I wrote it down in my college copybook or whatever at the time and left it there and went away. And I came back to it in 2016 when I was coming back from South America, where I'd been traveling for a while, and I was about to give up on music. I just had one of those days where those kind of people cropped up and didn't know if I really wanted a career in music, because there are so many of those people in music. I thought of that line and I just wrote out the full stream of consciousness that had evolved over those 4 years around that concept, blasted them onto the page in this big just mess of words, and then took my mental chisel and whittled that down into a song and turned it into something. And then I shelved it again, and then I came back to it in 2019 when I was making Sowing Acorns, and I brought this concept to my producers, and they were like, oh, this is really good, yeah, you need to do something with this, which I wasn't sure about, because it's one of the most authentically me songs of anything I've written.
I mean, when I first heard Birdsong, I was like, this is one of those songs, you know, like an iconic song that is attached to an artist and it will always be like their song. I think that's probably your song, to be honest. It's such a great just beat, and I've been singing it all the time recently. I am just such a big fan of that song. I really like the song, and then I realised I was listening to your Keyforge podcast episode, and it's actually like a proper girl power anthem.
Birdsong is based on the idea of a walking song, which is an old Scottish tradition. Walking isn't walking as in walking with your feet, but walking is an old word for working. It is the ritual of beating tartan off a table to soften it. So Scottish women would have used this as a rhythmic aid to keep the work going, to keep energy up, to keep morale up. So they'd have this rhythm of din 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 din, and they'd sit around the table together, and different women would take the lead on the verses, and then they'd all come together and sing the chorus on a song, and all the while beating cloth off a table to soften it, to turn it into clothes. So yeah, at the same time as my lecturer in college mentioned this line, she was also teaching us about walking songs and about songs of power for women. So the way that women have traditionally always in Scottish and Irish and Celtic and Gaelic tradition, there is a thread of powerful women rebelling and rejecting society's norms and deciding they're going to do things their own way and strike out their own way. So all of these things kind of came in together on me, and I was like, okay, I have this line, I have these ideas. What do I want to say with it? What do I want to achieve with this song? And I loved the idea of it being something that women could come together and sing together. And it's actually evolved into a song that, you know, people of all genders have sung together. I've had all kinds of people singing on this song and doing their own versions of it, which is really, really beautiful. But it's nice that it started as a women's song and has evolved from there.
Oh my goodness me, I was singing along the entire time, and I just stopped singing about 3 seconds until the end. That's Birdsong by Emma Langford. Hasn't that just got such a great beat? It's just been in my head for absolute days, and I hope it is now going to be in your head too. You may have noticed that song was in acapella, a style that you not often hear nowadays because instruments are used so much, and often an electronic beat is so much more popular than just a harmony made with the human voice. And this just phenomenon just fascinates me. So I asked Emma why she loves acapella too. I just love this song, sorry.
I have found myself prohibited by instruments in the past. So I've tried to write a song and haven't been able to achieve what I'm thinking in my head on a guitar or on a piano or whatever. So I found myself with that song, I really didn't want there to be a moment's hesitation in how I was going to sing it or how I was going to write it. So I said, I know exactly what I'm doing with my voice. I know how to use it. I know how to create the sounds I want to create. I'm just going to use my voice. And if instrument comes in afterwards, cool, fine, whatever. But for now, let's just throw myself into it and let it be what it is. And it worked out quite nicely that way. Now I'm kind of exploring though that as an option a bit more. I'm co-writing with a cellist. He creates soundscapes and I just sing over it, or I sing and he creates work around that. And it's a whole new way of working. But I think for anyone who, like me, finds themselves prohibited by their instrumental abilities, go and learn to play your instrument better, but also just sing. Just do it. Just record yourself singing. It's totally valid and beautiful. And the human voice is one of the oldest, most primitive means of communication. And there's a reason for that. It has a way of connecting with people in a way that no other instrument can.
I very much get the sense from watching your videos of you performing that how much you love performing, and your stage presence as well is just so relaxed. And yeah, I find myself like you're telling like little jokes as well, and I'm just kind of sniggling a little bit because you're just like really funny on stage, but also you just come out with this voice and I'm like, wow, so cool. Have you got any more like plans to do any gigs, like if it's even possible? Is there any light at the end of the tunnel for you to be able to perform again in real life, or are you kind of focusing on the online gigs at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I have bookings. I have a tour of Germany booked for September, October this year. I've got like a couple of shows around Ireland in November, but I'm very wary. I'm trying to be very zen about it. If it happens, it happens. I know I need to actually book flights and stuff, which, you know, that can't really leave that to the last minute and leave it to if it happens, it happens. But I don't know. I guess, I mean, those bookings are there. They give hope. There's an opportunity for something there, but if it doesn't happen, so be it. It hasn't happened for a year now. And that's just the way it's been. My priority really is everyone being safe. I'm not so eager to get back on stage that I would put anyone at risk. So for now, in November and September and October are lovely ideas. And if it's safe enough to do so, they will happen. But otherwise, we'll see.
What else are you working on at the moment? Are you working on any new music?
So we finished recording Colours, the album, the musical theatre album. So that's come out on socials. And I suppose that's an ongoing process of seeing what it evolves into and seeing what can be made of it. It's written and produced by a London/Irish composer, Charlie Eglinton. And while she's like pitching it to people, I'm like, oh, how about this person? How about this person? Hey, these people play it on the radio, you know, all this kind of stuff. So there's that. I'm also co-writing quite a bit with a friend up north. We're going to be releasing hopefully an EP in the next while. We've just finished recording a duet, and that's being mastered and being put forward to different people to see where it can take us. But so my first real co-writing experience, and it was such a joy. I'm about to work on a show about Gráinne Whale / Grace O'Malley, the Pirate Queen of Ireland. So that's another fun project.
Sounds like you're keeping busy for a musician in a time where music, like live music, and it's been really, really tough.
I mean, hey, look, if I can become the next Enya and go and live in a castle and never play live again, if it's all just studio work, so be it.
I would really like to talk about Sailor's Wife and kind of end the Woman of the Week on Sailor's Wife. So what can you tell me about that song?
I love this song. It, for me, is my apology to the people in my life who I have neglected when I get carried away in musical projects, or when I take off on a tour, or, you know, those kind of situations where there's people that get left behind. So the song is from the perspective of one of those people. It's someone who's on the shore watching her sailor head out to sea to his wild adventures, not knowing when he's going to come back, and not knowing if he's thinking about her or if he cares about her. So that's why I wrote it. And then musically, it's very inspired by like Joni Mitchell and Lisa Hannigan and the Staves, and, you know, these wonderful women in music whose work I love and admire. So and Laura Marling as well. So yeah, I just think that song has its own energy in a way, like, very different to anything else I've written.
Awesome. I'm so excited to play it. In true radio style then, to finish us off, can you introduce Sailor's Wife for Gorgeous FM?
Sure thing. I am Emma Langford, and I am on Gorgeous FM, and this is Sailor's Wife.
That's Sailor's Wife by Emma Langford, this week's Woman of the Week. That song is from the album Sowing Acorns, and Birdsong is also on Sowing Acorns, and that album is out now on all streaming platforms. I do recommend you give it a listen. If you want to follow Emma's journey, you can follow her on Twitter at @LangfordMusic, and she's also on Instagram and Facebook at Emma Langford Music. After the ads, I've got more women...